We're now going to look at the Mayfly family of nymphs, in particular the Baetis group. Baetis nymphs are very, very important to the fly fishermen. It's the major hatch in spring, and it's one which, as fly fishermen, we must home in on. They're so important that I have my fly box here, and I have one leaf completely given over to the Mayfly family. Here I've got 2 rows of Baetis nymphs. Then I've got flat stone clingers, yellow May mergers, more flat stone clingers, and some more much smaller Baetis nymphs down at the bottom. So Baetis nymphs, I cannot overemphasize, are very, very important. So now we're going to be tying flies in sizes 16 and 18. There's a 16 Baetis nymph in my fingers. This actual fly, this very fly, just a few weeks ago, caught my biggest ever wharf brown trout of 19 inches. We're looking at a fly with an overall body length, excluding tails, of no more than about 7 millimeters. So, let's make a start. So I've got here a standard size 16 long shank nymph hook. As usual, it's going to be leaded, but this time, because these nymphs are super slim, we have to lead it very carefully to make sure we don't add too much bulk in the wrong place. Peel off the backing. And now, when you enter the lead now, start with your first wrap of lead just forward of opposite the point. Certainly no further down the shank than that. Lock your lead on, wind forward. Then when you get just short of the eye, come back over. This is now going to be the thorax area to about there. And then if you want a little bit more weight, you can just allow yourself to go back with another couple or maybe a third wrap. And then nip that off. Just tweak off that spare lead. So no lead at all down to the end of the shank. I'm tying now with spider web throughout this entire fly. Build a little bit of a taper at the back of the lead so there's no abrupt edge, and then come down to the end of the shank, and there you're ready to put the tails in. For the tails I'm using this material, which is badger. Choose 3 fibres that are complete with the fine tips. You may be looking to get 3 all at once that have intact tips. Tweak them off. Align the tips so that they're all in line. Do that in your fingers. So, there are my 3 tails, all nicely aligned. I offer them up to the top of the shank. I do a pinch and loop, and I lock those in. Take 3 or 4 wraps round under moderate tension, and then get hold of all the 3 butts and drag through. Don't worry if one flies out wildly. Pull through until you've got tails that are about 1 1/4 the length of the abdomen. And then hold all the tips together. Now put full tension on your thread and bind down now, heading towards the bend. And go right on to the bend. Literally the start of the bend, and stop. Then take your scissors, just slide them underneath the butts and neatly sever them off. Now what you've got to fork those tails. So the easiest way is to come up underneath with your thumbnail and just rock in there, press and tilt, and that splays them. Now pull the near one towards you, the far one away from you, and leave the centre one where it is. You've got to fix them now in that position, otherwise the current will just wash them back. So what I do now, with my tying thread, I come between the far one and the middle one, come round over the top between the middle one and the near one, and again, and again, and one last turn under the middle one only to raise it up and part the thread. So there are your 3 nice permanently splayed tails. Now for the abdomen, I'm going to use this yellowish olive flexi body. I'm taking off a strip only about a 1/16 wide, just slightly widening and making it a little bit wider as I go along, but not much. So in other words, it's a slight wedge shape. Peel off my flexi body, just cut in the tying-in point, just cut a little sharp tying-in tag. And now offer this up to the top of the fly, come in between a couple of tails which will help to hold it in place, and catch that down. So catch this little tying-in tag down. Sometimes it wants to wander, that's got it. And tie that down, working back, stretch it slightly, working back to the base of the tails, but don't upset the set of the tails. And then 2 more thread wraps. Try to keep thread wraps away from the tail end of the fly. That's the end that's got to have the fine taper on. So no more thread wraps at the tail end. You've done all you need there. You've got your tails tied in, you've got your flexi body tied in. Move your tying thread now forward. Look now for depressions in the abdomen and just dub these out with tying thread. What you're going to do now is going to come all the way along, starting from behind the leaded thoracic area, and with the tying thread, with this spider web, I'm going to make this one nice continual slim taper, geometrically tapering. Try to avoid lumps and bumps and don't go any further down than there. Find any low spots and drop thread into them. In other words, you're making it nice and smooth. Smooth and tapering. That looks not bad. And you can just rub your nail along if there's any bits that are high. Great. For wing buds, I'm using the fibres from a primary feather of a crow, but it can be anything. It could be turkey or duck or goose. But this is ideal and it's readily available. So take off 2 slips, just plunge in there with your blade. I'm not going to opposite feathers here. It's not necessary. You don't need a left and a right. Try to get these both the same. Just go through with your scissor point and make a snappy cut like that. Peel that off. Try to keep them both the same. Maybe I've made this slightly too wide. It's easy in your fingers just to go in with your scissor point and peel off the number of fibres that it's too wide by. And then you simply take one of these slips. You see there's a shiny side and a dull side. When I fold it over, I want the dull side to come to the top. So I tie it in with the shiny side uppermost at this stage. So I offer it across the shank like that at an angle and come round with your tying thread and lock it down. Take the other one and do the same, shiny side up. Cross it now in the other direction. Come over the soft wrap and lock down. And again, now climb up onto the thorax and tie down those waist bits with a couple of wraps. Take your scissors, snip off the waist, snip off the waist. And now I'm ready to produce this nice, realistic, segmented abdomen. So I've got to get these 2 wing buds out of the way. They're flapping in my way here. So what I do, I lift these over and just drop my tying thread over a couple of wraps to hold them out of the way while I perform now with my flexi body. Before I do that, I get a marker pen, darken the top side of the nymph. You've got to be careful with a felt pen. They are too loaded with ink and they'll bleed to the underside. This is a quick way of giving you counter shading. You know, all creatures have a dark dorsal surface and a lighter belly, a lighter ventral side. So now I just take the flexi body, stretch it slightly to start with. First turn, snug up to the base of the tails, and now work forward with every turn slightly overlapping the previous one. And this just gives you that nice, succulent, really insecty looking, translucent abdomen. Let's just go back to that one, make it a bit more pronounced. That's better. When you arrive at the wing buds, where the wing buds are curving forward, drop this thread off your wing buds and let them spring back. Gather them up like that and tether those down using the flexi body as a tying medium, trapping them down to the sides of the nymph. One more full turn of flexi body brings it to the top. Shorten your working thread and tie that flexi body down. Tie down. Don't cut that tag off, you need that. What you do now is you fold that back over and swing it round until it lies between those two wing buds and tie down and tie down. But don't tie it down as far as the wing buds. The wing buds want to spring out rearwards of this flexi body. And then I just crush that with my thumbnail to make it nice and flat. And now I'm ready to put the legs in. For legs I'm using olive dyed partridge, and I look for a really short fibred feather that's sort of there in the sort of shoulder blades of the bird, and look for one before you tweak it off that's got all the tips complete. So there's one that I can use. Tweak that off, strip off the lower fibres, just roll it off. And now I've got to get right down to this very end. So what I do, I hold one side of the feather and with the ball of my thumb I stroke the fibres back. Just stroke the fibres back. Turn the feather and stroke the fibres back there. And I've got to get right down so that I'm literally within 3 or 4 fibres of the very end of the hackle. Having done that, I simply take the hackle, concave side uppermost, offer that in right where your thread is hanging, and come round and catch that tip down. Hold the fibres back and now lock down those tips. And now the dubbing. So we're going to use a darkish olive sparkly SLF finesse. This is Masterclass shade 1. It's nice glinty dubbing. Just knock it on and then spread it by tapping it underside with the ball of your finger and just spread it along by shredding it out with your thumbnail, and just make a short roll like that. And now tighten it in. Really go to work on it, tighten it in so it's very, very fine. Do avoid heavy applications, otherwise the thorax will look far, far too bulbous. Right, hold the legs back out of the way, you don't want to trap them down. And now come forward and tie down. Bit of excess on there, slough it off And any really straggly spare fibres, there's some there near the head, you can always detach those with the scissor point. So I'm going to show you how to make what I call a head cement sandwich. Because this is tied in with its very delicate tip, you're going to say, well, there's no strength there. That's not going to hold up in a fishing situation. But I'm going to now, if you like, use glue to hold this down. Just put on the top here a little dab of head cement, and then you bring that hackle over. There's the nice legs all nicely splayed. Slight tension on the thread and lock over. Keep the quill line central. Don't pull too much on the quill, otherwise you'll pop it. Tie down, tie down, tie down. That's your legs tied in. Take your scissors, slide the blade under the eye and detach. I don't want that. I don't want that one. So if I turn this now to the camera, you'll see how we position the legs. Now, to complete my head cement sandwich, I'm going to make sure that these leg fibres will never come back together and zip up. You know how feathers zip up. I'm going to make sure they don't zip up. I'm going to keep them separated. So I get my head cement again and drop a touch of head cement now on top of the hackle. And you can see now that that's going to make a solid matrix of head cement and these wing buds when it comes over. Now for the wing buds. Far wing bud, pick it up, bring it over to my side. Bring that over the legs and tie down. And again. Near wing bud, lift it over the legs. Make sure you go over the legs and tie down. And again, and again. And the last operation, lift the flexibody up. This now splits the thorax, goes between the two wing buds, opens them up, puts them in a bank on either side, tie that down. Now just separate these two, let the flexibody hang forward, bring those back by holding them like that. Come round with your spider web and tie that flexibody down right there, hard into the shoulders of the eye. Let those two pieces of feather fibre now stick out at right angles. Bring your tying thread back behind them. If you want to reduce a little bit of length off these for passing over when you do your whip finish, you can take a bit off. Get hold of that tag. This is your last manoeuvre. Bring that tag of flexibody back. And what's going to happen here, my tying off point is going to be actually in the neck of the creature. It's going to be there, behind the head. What that does, it makes sure that you've got a beautiful clean eye. There's no tying thread, no materials, no nothing sticking out over the eye of the hook. So when you come to tie on, you've got a lovely clear eye to work with. Bring your spider web and now tie down there really hard in the neck. Come round now and lock straight over with a 2-finger whip finish. And I do a few wraps there, making sure it stays in the neck. Trap there, pull my finger out, slide through. Just give it a crush down there with my nail as I pull tight. You see that spider web is extremely strong sometimes. See, I'm flexing the hook. Fly's completed. Snip off. Lift up my spare tag of flexibody. One cut. That's off. And then look now what happens when I trim off this wing-bud material, leaving a little millimetre tag sticking out, I get a little black dot, which I suppose you could say looks like an eye. And I'll just trim that one a little bit closer. So that's the tying completely done. You can, of course, just, if you want to be really sure of your whippings, just take some head cement and just hit the thread wraps. And that's probably my all-time best pattern for spring fishing. It may be a complex tie in as much as there are several materials and one or two manoeuvres, but once you've learnt the route and you've got the route in your head, it's a straightforward tie.